The hallway light buzzed faintly overhead, that low, persistent hum you only notice when everything else has gone too quiet. I was folding laundry in the dim living room, her favorite gray cardigan still warm from the dryer, smelling faintly of lavender detergent and something sweeter I couldn't place. Megan came through the front door a little after 11, coat damp from the evening mist, cheeks flushed in a way that looked like cold air but felt like something else. She kicked off her boots without looking at me, the leather slapping the mat harder than necessary. "Hey," she said, voice light but edged, like she was testing the air. "You're still up." I nodded, setting the cardigan on the arm of the couch. Couldn't sleep. How was the bar? Crowded. Loud. Same as always. She crossed to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, drank half of it standing at the sink. Her reflection in the dark window stared back, eyes bright, lips parted just enough to show she was breathing faster than the walk from the car should have required. "Hi everyone. My name is Daniel, 38 years old. Married 6 years to the woman I still sometimes catch myself watching across a room like we just met. I design bridges for a living, steel, concrete, calculations that promise nothing will collapse if you do the math right. Megan teaches elementary school. She's the one parents thank at open house because their kids actually want to go to class. We don't have children yet. We always said soon, the way people say it when they mean maybe never. Our house is small, craftsman style, too many bookshelves and not enough closet space. Up until recently, I thought that described us perfectly. Full of small, good things, a little cramped, but holding steady. That night, she lingered in the kitchen longer than usual. I heard the soft clink of her phone screen lighting up on the counter, then going dark. She didn't pick it up. Instead, she turned, leaned against the doorway, arms crossed loosely like she was cold. "You okay?" I asked. She smiled. Small, quick, the one she uses on students when they're about to cry but haven't yet. Just tired. Long week. I believed her. Or I told myself I did. The lie wasn't in her words. It was in the half-second pause before she said them. The way her thumb brushed the edge of her sleeve as if wiping away an invisible mark. We went to bed. She curled against my back the way she always had, breath steady against my neck. I lay awake listening to the rain start again, softer this time, like it was trying not to wake anyone. Around 2 a.m. her phone vibrated once on the nightstand, short, insistent. She didn't stir. I stared at the ceiling, heart ticking faster than it should have. The next morning she left early for a staff meeting that wasn't on her calendar. I found a single earring, gold hoop, not hers, on the passenger seat of her car when I went to grab the garage opener. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't proof. But it sat there like a question no one had asked yet. And that was the moment the math stopped adding up. In the beginning, Daniel exists inside a carefully constructed illusion, a marriage built on routine, shared domestic sense, small gestures of affection that feel eternal because they've repeated for years. He expects loyalty to be the default setting after 6 years, the same way he trusts a bridge won't fall if the load calculations check out. Reality begins its quiet invasion through micro details: the flushed cheeks, the private phone glow, the too quick smile, the foreign earring. These aren't explosions, they're hairline fractures. The psychological tension lies in his initial denial, rationalizing every anomaly as fatigue, weather, coincidence. This gap between what he hopes, a stable, loving partnership, and what the environment quietly insists, something is shifting, creates the first layer of cognitive dissonance. It's realistic because most betrayals don't arrive with fanfare. They leak in through ordinary moments, forcing the betrayed to question their own perception before they question their partner. The mini cliffhanger of the earring plants the seed. Innocence is still possible, but doubt has entered the house and closed the door behind it. The days after the earring incident felt like walking across one of my own unfinished bridges. Every step measured, every creak amplified in my head. I kept the small gold hoop in the top drawer of my desk at work, tucked inside an old envelope with miscellaneous written on it in my handwriting. I told myself it was nothing. Megan had friends who borrowed jewelry. Or maybe a student's mother left it in the car during pickup. Rational explanations lined up neatly, the way I like things to line up. But the neatness started fraying. She began locking her phone now. Not dramatically, just a quick thumb swipe whenever I walked into the room. The screen would go dark before I could catch more than a flash of color. Green bubbles, a heart emoji once, gone. I noticed because I had never noticed before. For 6 years, her phone had sat face up on the coffee table while we watched documentaries, notifications popping like shared secrets. Now it lived face down, screen brightness dialed so low it looked like it was trying to hide. One Tuesday, she came home late again. "Girls' night ran long," she said, hanging her coat. Her perfume was the same, citrus and vanilla, but underneath it there was something sharper, like cedar or expensive cologne that didn't belong to me. She smiled when she said it, the corners of her mouth lifting just enough to show teeth, but her eyes stayed somewhere else. I asked, casual as I could manage, "Which bar this time?" "Rusty Anchor. You know, the one on Fifth." She was already moving toward the stairs. "I'm exhausted. Shower then bed." I nodded, watched her climb. The way her hand trailed the banister felt rehearsed, like she was performing normalcy. That night, I lay beside her in the dark, listening to her breathing slow into sleep. My own pulse wouldn't settle. Around 1:17 a.m., I checked the clock. Her phone lit up on the nightstand. Not a call, a notification. The screen faced away from me, but the glow painted a thin blue stripe across her bare shoulder. She didn't move. I stared at that stripe until it faded. The next morning, she was up before me, humming in the kitchen. Pancakes. The smell of maple syrup and butter filled the house, warm and familiar. She slid a plate in front of me, kissed the top of my head like she used to when we were newlyweds. "Big day?" I asked. "Parent-teacher conferences start at 9. Wish me luck." She left wearing the navy dress I'd always liked, the one that hugged her waist. I watched her car pull out, then sat at the table until the pancakes went cold. That afternoon, Eric texted, "Beer after work? Been too long." Eric's been my closest friend since college. Loud where I'm quiet. The guy who drags me out when I'd rather stay in. I met him at a dive near the office. He ordered IPAs for both of us before I could protest. "You look like shit," he said, sliding a glass over. "What's up?" I told him about the earring, the late nights, the phone. I kept my voice level, like I was reporting structural stress test results. He listened, nodding slowly. "Could be nothing. Could be something. You gonna ask her straight?" "I don't want to be that guy. The paranoid husband." Eric leaned back. "Paranoid is one word. Observant is another. Just pay attention. People don't change overnight unless something's pushing them." I went home feeling lighter for about 20 minutes. Then Megan walked in carrying takeout. Thai, pad CEW, her favorite. She set the bags down, kicked off her shoes, and said, "I got extra spring rolls. Thought we could watch that new series." We ate on the couch. She curled her legs under her, leaned against my shoulder. Halfway through the second episode, her phone buzzed on the cushion between us. She glanced at it, silenced it without looking, turned the volume up on the TV. I felt the warmth leave the spot where the name wasn't familiar. Not a colleague, not a friend I knew. I set the phone back exactly where it had been. My hands were steady. My chest wasn't. The next girls' night was Friday. She left at 6:30 wearing jeans and the leather jacket I bought her for our 5th anniversary. Kissed me on the cheek. Said, "Don't wait up." I didn't. Instead, I sat in the dark living room with the curtains open, streetlight cutting sharp angles across the rug. Around 10:42, her location pinged on our shared app. She was still at the Rusty Anchor. I opened the map. That it didn't move for 40 minutes. Then it did. Not toward home. Southwest. Toward the highway. I stared at the blue circle sliding across the screen until it stopped at an address I didn't recognize. A mid-range hotel off the interstate. The kind with exterior corridors and free continental breakfast. My throat closed. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there, phone in my hand, watching the dot stay perfectly still for the next 3 hours. When she came home at 2:14 a.m., she smelled like hotel soap and someone else's cologne. She slipped into bed without turning on the light. I pretended to be asleep, but sleep was the last thing on my mind. Daniel's growing suspicion is a textbook case of attachment anxiety colliding with denial. He is wired, through years of stable routine and professional reliance on evidence, to trust patterns until they break. Megan's behavioral shifts, phone privacy, scent changes, location anomalies, trigger his threat detection system, but his emotional investment in the marriage activates powerful cognitive defenses. Minimization could be nothing. External attribution she's just tired. And self-doubt. I don't want to be that guy. This internal tug-of-war produces chronic low-grade hypervigilance, insomnia, obsessive clock-watching, cataloging microgestures, which erodes his sense of reality without giving him concrete permission to act. Megan, meanwhile, displays classic compartmentalization. She maintains domestic warmth, pancakes, cuddling, takeout, to preserve the primary attachment while feeding a separate, exciting one. The name Chris on the preview is the first crack in her firewall, yet Daniel still doesn't confront, because confirmation would collapse the entire relational structure he depends on for identity and safety. Psychologically, he is in the bargaining stage of anticipatory grief, clinging to plausible deniability even as intuition screams otherwise. The hotel is the point where rationalization becomes nearly impossible, yet he still chooses observation over explosion. That restraint is both his strength and his torment. It buys clarity at the cost of prolonged suffering. The hotel burned behind my eyes for days. I didn't confront her that weekend. Instead, I started collecting data the only way I knew how, methodically, like stress testing a design before it ever sees concrete. Monday morning, I drove past the rusty anchor on my way to the office. It was a brick building with neons still glowing weakly in daylight, parking lot half empty. I sat in my car across the street for 20 minutes, pretending to answer emails. No Megan. No one who looked like a Chris. Just delivery drivers and a bartender sweeping cigarette butts into the gutter. I downloaded a call logging app that night while she was in the shower. It felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. The installation took 3 minutes. The guilt took longer. I told myself it was only metadata, times, numbers, not content. Still, when the first report came through at 3 a.m. 2 nights later, I stared at the screen until my eyes watered. Outgoing call at 11:42 p.m. duration, 14 minutes. The number wasn't in her contacts under any name I recognized. I reverse searched it the next day from my work laptop during lunch. Landline registered to a Christopher Lang in a neighboring suburb. No social media footprint that matched anyone we knew. Just a generic white pages listing. I closed the tab so fast the browser tab tore. That week her staff meetings multiplied. 3 in 5 days. Each time the shared location drifted. Not home, not school, but looping through quiet residential streets before settling at coffee shops. Then a bookstore. Then back to the same hotel. Always the same exit off the highway. Always gone 2 to 4 hours. I started noticing other things. She'd stopped asking about my day. Conversations became logistical. Did you pick up milk? The garbage goes out tomorrow. She laughed at my jokes less. When I touched her shoulder, she stiffened for half a second before relaxing into it, like muscle memory fighting new wiring. Eric noticed too. We met for coffee instead of beer this time. He studied my face the way a doctor studies an X-ray. You're not sleeping, he said. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're doing that thing where you talk quieter when you're lying to yourself. I told him about the number. The hotel. The pattern. He exhaled through his nose. You need proof or you'll drive yourself insane second-guessing every shadow. But once you have it, you can't unsee it. I knew he was right. Friday, I Googled private investigators. Found Tom Whitaker. Ex-cop, 10 years in surveillance, clean website, fair reviews. His office smelled like old coffee and leather binders. He didn't smile when he shook my hand, just listened. I need documentation, I said. Photos, timestamps, proof she's meeting someone. He quoted a price that made my stomach turn. I paid the deposit anyway. The next girls' night, Tom followed her. I stayed home, lights off, television on mute. My phone buzzed at 9:17 p.m. Tom. Subject entered rusty anchor at 19:03. Alone. Currently at corner table with white male, approximate 40, dark hair, wearing navy blazer. They are holding hands under the table. Attached, grainy photo through the window. Megan laughing, head tilted back. The man, Chris, I assumed, looking at her like she was the only light in the room. I sat on the floor with my back against the couch and stared at the image until the pixels blurred. 2 days later, Tom sent the full preliminary packet. 6 photos. Restaurant. Hotel parking lot. Her getting into his car. Them walking into room 214. Timestamped. Dated. Irrefutable. There was also a short video clip. 30 seconds. No sound. Megan stepping out of the hotel room alone, hair mussed, adjusting her scarf, small private smile on her face as she checked her phone. The same smile she used to give me in the mornings. I watched it 3 times. Then I deleted it from my phone, but kept the link Tom sent. That night, she came home humming, kissed my cheek, said she was going to grade papers in the spare room. I waited until her door clicked shut. Then I opened my laptop and started reading about no-fault divorce in our state. The investigation phase marks the second irreversible pivot in the collapse. Stage 1 was passive suspicion, micro-behaviors absorbed but rationalized. Stage 2 is active pursuit. Daniel crosses from observer to participant in his own betrayal by hiring Tom, installing software, reverse searching numbers. Each choice is a small death of the old trust. The point of no return isn't the photos themselves. It's the moment he pays the deposit, when fear of truth becomes less painful than living in ambiguity. Psychologically, this is the shift from denial to anger, though the anger is still cold and contained. Megan's continued performance of normalcy, humming, kissing his cheek, deepens the dissonance. She is protecting her secret life by preserving the surface of the marriage, while Daniel is dismantling that surface piece by piece. The hotel room video is the visual guillotine. Her private smile, once reserved for him, now belongs to someone else. From here, reconciliation would require not just forgiveness, but a complete rewrite of reality, and Daniel's methodical nature makes that impossible. He has moved from, maybe I'm wrong, to, I can never not know. That epistemic shift, once knowledge is obtained, innocence cannot be restored, is the true point of no return. I waited 3 days. Not out of mercy, out of preparation. I printed the photos, time-stamped, date-stamped, put them in a plain manila folder, kept the folder in my work bag during the day, on the kitchen counter at night, like a loaded gun I wasn't ready to fire. Wednesday evening, she came home at 6:40. I had dinner ready, roast chicken, the kind she likes with rosemary and garlic. Candles lit, table set. She walked in, saw it, froze for half a second. "What's the occasion?" she asked, voice careful. "Sit down," I said. She did. Slowly. Coat still on. I placed the folder between us. Didn't open it yet. "I know about Chris," I said. Her face didn't crumple the way I expected. It went blank, like a screen buffering. "I don't know what you—" "Stop." My voice was quieter than I meant it to be. "The photos are in there. Hotel. Restaurant. His car. Room 214. 3 separate nights. Time-stamped." Silence stretched, so long I could hear the refrigerator compressor click on. She reached for the folder. Opened it. Flipped through the pages. Her hands were steady. Too steady. "How long?" I asked. "For months." "For months." Longer than I'd guessed. Longer than the first cracks I'd noticed. "Why?" She closed the folder. Looked at me. Really looked, for the first time in weeks. I felt invisible. "With you everything was safe. Predictable." I started talking to him online, old high school friend. It was supposed to be harmless. Then it wasn't. "You felt invisible." I repeated it slowly. "So, you decided to become someone else's secret?" Tears came then. Not dramatic sobs. Quiet, steady leaking. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could keep both." "You can't." "I know." She reached across the table. I didn't take her hand. "I'll end it," she said. "Today? Right now? I'll block him. We can go to counseling. We can fix this." I looked at the candle flame. It wavered when I exhaled. "No, Daniel. You don't get to decide the terms anymore. You made a choice every time you drove to that hotel. Every time you came home and kissed me with his smell on you. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern." She started crying harder. "I love you. Maybe you did. Once." I stood up, blew out the candles. The smoke curled upward in thin gray spirals. "I'm filing next week. You can stay here until you find a place. Or you can leave tonight. Your call." She stayed seated, staring at the folder like it might disappear if she looked away long enough. I walked upstairs, closed the bedroom door, sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. Downstairs I heard her moving, slow footsteps, the scrape of a chair, the soft click of the front door opening and closing. She didn't slam it. She just left. The confrontation is the moment suppressed emotion finally finds its form in controlled speech and deliberate action. Daniel's calm is not detachment. It is rage so cold it has crystallized into clarity. Every sentence is measured because any outburst would give her the power to reframe the narrative. "You're being dramatic." By staying quiet, He forces her to sit with the weight of her own choices. Megan's responses, initial blankness, then tears, then bargaining, are textbook defensive maneuvers, freeze, flood, negotiation. Her admission, for months, and explanation, I felt invisible. Attempt to shift part of the blame onto the marriage itself, a common tactic to dilute personal responsibility. Yet Daniel refuses the invitation to co-own the betrayal. His refusal of reconciliation is the decisive action. It severs the last thread of hope she might manipulate. The candle blowing is symbolic, extinguishing the illusion of warmth they'd maintained. Emotionally, this is the death of the relationship, not with screams, but with stillness. The quiet door closing at the end is devastating because it lacks melodrama. It is the sound of finality arriving without fanfare. Megan moved out 4 days later. She took half the books, most of her clothes, the coffee maker she'd always preferred. Left the house keys on the kitchen counter with a single post-it. "I'm sorry. I'll call when I have an address." I didn't reply. Eric came over that weekend with pizza and a six-pack. We sat on the back porch, even though it was too cold, breath fogging between us. "You did the right thing," he said. "I don't know what the right thing is anymore. You kept your dignity. That's more than most people manage." I stared at the bare maple tree in the yard. No leaves, just branches like exposed nerves. I met with a lawyer the following Tuesday. No fault, equitable distribution. We had no kids, no shared business, no complicating assets. It would be clean. Painful, but clean. The house felt bigger without her. Echoes lasted longer. I slept in the guest room for a week because the master bedroom still smelled faintly of her shampoo. Then I moved back in, changed the sheets, opened the windows, let the cold air scour everything. I started running again. Early mornings, before the neighborhood woke up. Pavement cold under my shoes, lungs burning, mind finally quiet for 30 minutes at a time. Tom sent one last invoice. I paid it. Then I deleted his number. Megan texted twice. Once asking if she could pick up the rest of her winter coats. Once saying she'd started therapy and was really working on herself. I answered the first, ignored the second. 3 weeks after she left, I packed a duffel and drove north, Pacific Northwest, a trip I'd talked about for years but never taken. Eric called it my reset button. I called it breathing room. The coast was gray and restless. I walked beaches where driftwood lay like bones. Watched waves collapse and reform. Slept in cheap motels with thin walls and loud heaters. In a small-town bookstore, I met Laura. She was behind the counter, recommending novels to tourists. Dark hair pulled back, quick laugh, no wedding ring. We talked about Murakami, then about rain, then about nothing important. She gave me her number on a bookmark. I didn't call right away, but I kept the bookmark. Daniel's central mistake was equating longevity with security. 6 years of routine convinced him the foundation was unshakable, so he ignored early tremors. Megan's mistake was compartmentalization, believing she could nurture a secret life without starving the primary one. Both paid for underestimating how betrayal poisons slowly. The lesson for Daniel is brutal but liberating. Trust is not automatic. It must be continuously earned through transparency and emotional presence. He learns that dignity is non-negotiable. Staying calm during confrontation preserved his self-respect when rage would have handed her the narrative. The secondary lesson is agency. He didn't wait for her to dictate terms of reconciliation or separation. By acting decisively, filing, moving rooms, traveling, he reclaims control over his own story. Laura's appearance is not a rebound. It's proof that openness to new connection becomes possible only after old illusions are fully dismantled. The biggest takeaway is that grief is not linear, but agency is. Small deliberate actions, running, traveling, changing sheets, rebuild identity faster than waiting for pain to fade on its own. 6 months later, the divorce was final. Papers signed in a beige office with bad fluorescent lighting. Megan didn't fight anything. She looked smaller across the table, tired eyes, no makeup. We didn't speak beyond what the lawyers required. I kept the house, sold her half of the equity, used the money to pay off the car, and start a small travel fund. I run 4 mornings a week now. The route takes me past the Rusty Anchor. I don't slow down. I don't speed up. It's just a building. Laura and I talk most days. Sometimes video. She's planning a trip out here next spring. No pressure, just possibility. Eric still checks in. "You sound different," he said last week. "Lighter." "I am. Some nights I sit on the porch with coffee and watch the streetlights come on. The quiet doesn't scare me anymore. It feels like space I can finally breathe into. I still think about Megan, not with anger, not with longing. Just a faint ache, like pressing a bruise to see if it still hurts. It does. Less every month. I learned that betrayal doesn't end who you are. It ends who you thought you were with someone else. The man who trusted blindly is gone. The man who trusts deliberately is still forming. And that feels like enough. This story is ultimately about perception's fragility and resilience's quiet power. Daniel begins blind not because he is foolish, but because humans are wired to preserve attachment systems that once kept us safe. 6 years of shared domesticity created a perceptual filter. Small warnings were filtered out as noise to protect the larger narrative of us. Betrayal shatters that filter, forcing a painful but accurate recalibration of reality. The universal insight is that trust is not a gift bestowed once. It is a daily choice renewed through honesty and attention. When broken, it cannot be glued back invisibly. Attempts to do so only deepen the fracture. Daniel's arc illustrates that healing is not forgiveness, which he never offers, but integration, absorbing the pain without letting it define the future self. Empowerment arrives not through revenge or dramatic rebirth, but through mundane acts of sovereignty, changing sheets, running, saying no, walking on a new beach. The story reminds us that betrayal reveals character, not just the betrayers, but the betrayers. Daniel's restraint, methodical grief, and eventual openness show that dignity and hope can coexist with heartbreak. Nearly 30 to 40% of long-term partnerships face some form of infidelity. What separates survival from collapse is whether the betrayed can grieve the lost illusion without losing themselves in the wreckage. Daniel does. And that is the quiet, hard-won victory at the center of it all.